Later, eating Danish pastry and tasting steaming coffee in the coffee shop a block away from Loring's apartment, the world seemed normal again. Their eyes met across the table and they smiled, a little sheepishly at one another.
Feel better, sweetheart?
Loring asked. You know I do, she said softly. Then her smile abruptly disappeared and she frowned slightly. But David, I have to tell you the rest of it. Even though I want to forget, and I know you would, after I had this feeling of being embraced.
You had an erotic fantasy, Janice.
David interrupted firmly.
It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's an honest, sound, objective appraisal of a scientific reality that every man has experienced a good many times in his life, and every woman too.
Janice shook her head. It would be alright if my erotic fantasy involved a man with no particular cast or features, just a man in the abstract. But it involved a living man, a man which I'd just met and described to you. He is alive and a rival, and you have to think of him in that way. You can't help yourself, no matter how scientifically enlightened you may try to be.
I know,
Loring said.
I was lying to myself and to you. I'd be jealous if it was just a man in the abstract. I'd be jealous if that man wasn't me.
She tried to laugh, tried to force gaiety into her voice. You don't have to carry it quite as far as that, she said. Man would be you, without all of the very special details filled in. You create a mental image first, in the abstract, a kind of a unconscious clay model. Then you meet the only man in the world for you and fill the details in. It was a terrifying experience. I knew he couldn't be real, but his strength was so great. I couldn't free myself. Even if I'd struggled violently and clawed at his face, he'd have caught me again before I could reach the door. Loring's face had gone very white.
But he was so attractive to you that you didn't struggle. Is that it?
Even before the words left his lips, he hated himself, but he had to say them. She shook her head, her eyes firmly denying it. He was attractive, yes. The handsomest man I've ever seen, but high attractiveness had nothing to do with it. Oh, if he'd been an ugly-faced brute, I suppose it might have seemed worse, but not much worse. I couldn't struggle because I'd gone numb all over. I couldn't even raise my arms.
A man doesn't have to be an ugly face to be a brute.
There's nothing more, so you can stop torturing yourself. Quite suddenly he was gone, almost as if he'd never been there. It was all like some hideous nightmare, one of those dangerous, utterly terrifying dreams from which you awaken just in time. They are dangerous because people have died in their sleep just from shock. But I did awaken in time. You'll never know how relieved I felt, how inwardly glad.
Then why are you still frightened? Nothing happened to you. It's over and done with. Even his actual presence in your room when you heard him speak may have been an hallucination. Perfectly normal people can have hallucinations. What else is bothering you, Janice?
She toyed with her coffee cup for a moment before answering, then spoke in a low voice. An even stranger, more terrifying thing happened. Harder to explain and ghastly in a completely non-human way. I don't think I was in quite as much danger because it just stood there in the hall watching me without moving at all. But I had the feeling that if it did move, I'd be in even greater danger.
Janice, what are you talking about?
Just give me a moment, darling. I'll tell you, but please don't rush me. Let me tell in my own way. It was so frightening, so unbelievable that the mere thought of it makes me almost physically ill. In a way, it could be an hallucination because I did have the shock of the other experience before I saw it. No shock preceded the first experience, as I told you, but this one.